Hello folks, it's the Pace Chaser again. Welcome to another one of my videos. This is the third part in the series looking at photographs of buses and coaches of East Yorkshire motor services. And this one we're going to take a break from the chronological order of things to look at the AEC Routemaster buses that operated in Hull between 1988 and 1995. So following deregulation in 1986, some competition broke out on the streets of Hull. Nothing of the magnitude that would be seen in the early 1990s, but it was there nevertheless. And so keen to protect its interests on the busy routes 56 and 56A, which ran from Hull bus station along Holderness Road to Long Hill Estate, and then either to Bilton, Asda or to Fleet Estate respectively, East Yorkshire began to look for something different to try and attract people onto their route. From 1987 the routes have been operated with Leyland Atlanteans, fitted with exact fare boxes, because the route was considered to be too busy to allow change to be given. It was considered that the dwell time at stops would be far too long if the driver was given change. From the 3rd of May 1988, which was a Tuesday, these Atlanteans were replaced by ex-London Routemasters, operated with conductors and carrying East Yorkshire's traditional blue and primrose livery. The advantage of these was twofold. Firstly, they stood out from the crowd of conventional one-person operated buses, as operated by Kingston upon Hull City Transport, or KHCT, and the various independents which had sprung up, and also on East Yorkshire's other routes that used Holderness Road. And secondly, they were quicker, because instead of asking the driver for your ticket and then putting your money in the fare box and waiting for the ticket to be issued, the passengers simply got on and sat down, and the fares were taken as the bus drove along the road. This meant that dwell time at bus stops was far less, and the route could be done with fewer buses, thereby helping to offset the cost of the extra crew member by using fewer buses on the route. In actual fact, the latter cost survey didn't quite work, as we'll see later on, but we'll discuss that in a little bit. So 7 Routemasters were purchased from London buses for service, with an 8th being acquired for spares only, the latter being RM846, registration WLT846, which for several years after 1988 could be found just inside Allaby Road Garage, next to the fuel pumps adjacent to the sidewall. Although there was no obvious reason to rush the entry into service of the Routemasters, they were rushed. As a result, 5 of them were sent off to East Kent Engineering to be painted in East Yorkshire livery. 1 was done by London buses themselves, and 1 was done in East Yorkshire's workshops at Allaby Common. That instead of just filtering through the company paint shops as would normally be done. Even then, the vast majority of them entered service without the white band on the roof. As you can see on 802 here, the white band was added over the forthcoming weeks as time permitted. Incidentally, photographs of them without the white band are not that uncommon by any means. After they entered service in 1988, every photographer and his dog descended on Hull to record the new acquisitions, so there were loads of photos of them running without the white bands. So the bus we've been looking at is 802, registration WLT798. It's seen just turn out of Hull bus station onto Ferrens Way, on its way to Fleet Estate on a route 56A. Formerly RM798 in London and new in 1961, the bus was re-registered NRH 802A in 1990, when the Routemasters began to lose their original registrations, which were sold off to raise extra revenue. After withdrawal in August 1995, it was exported to the Czech Republic, and it's believed to still exist out there. So we're going in East Yorkshire's fleet number order for this video. So the next one is 803, or the former 803 by this point. And here we see the bus in its life after Hull. So formerly RM871, registered WLT871 and new in July 1961. It was re-registered NRH 803A in 1991 by East Yorkshire. After withdrawal in March 1995, it passed to the Greater Reading Omnibus Company, who traded as Reading Mainline and became their fleet number 26. As you can see by the time I took this photo of it in the depot at Cardiff Road, in 1998 it had been withdrawn from service. Some parts had been removed, including the rear light clusters and the destination blinds, but happily it was put back into service shortly after this photo was taken, and it ran until the end of Reading Mainline Routemaster operation, following the takeover by Reading buses. It was a remarkable survivor, this bus. It regained its original registration WLT871 in 1999, and then it passed back to London buses, the forerunner of Transport for London, and it was refurbished and put back into service in London. They pursued a policy in the early 2000s of putting Routemasters back into service. So it worked for various operators in London, and then it passed to Stagecoach as part of the Heritage fleet. When Routemasters were withdrawn from normal service in London in 2005, a couple of Heritage routes continued to run, and this one ran on Route 15 with Stagecoach for several years. It's still in use in London today, actually. It passed to Londoner buses more recently, and it's now used on their Heritage service, so you can still find it in service in the capital. As I said, a remarkable survivor. So as I mentioned already, the Routemasters entered service on Tuesday the 3rd of May 1988. Monday the 2nd of May was a bank holiday. They didn't run the all-day service on routes 56 and 56A. The first journey operated by Routemaster was at 7 o'clock from Hull bus station, and the last one was about 2000 from Long Hill back towards town. Outside of these times, so in the early mornings and the late evenings on Monday to Saturday, the route was operated by normal one-person operated vehicles, and all day on Sunday and bank holidays it was operated by one-person operated vehicles as well, hence why they didn't enter service on the Monday. So the very first run, the 7 o'clock from Hull bus station on Tuesday, May the 3rd, 1988, was performed by this vehicle, number 804, registration WLT 982. It was pursued on its journey out of Hull by an enthusiast in his car. He took photographs of it at various points along the route, including this one at the Fleet Estate terminus after it had arrived on that first journey. The first run, the 7 o'clock from Hull bus station, was actually a 56D. It ran via the Guildhall, but the Routemasters never carried 56D on the route number blinds, so they had to display 56A. So this shot shows the bus parked at the Ark Royal terminus on Fleet Estate, which was actually just alongside the sidewall of the Asda store that the 56 terminated at, so they weren't very far apart, the termini. So following that photo, the enthusiast in question, whose name I don't know, asked the crew to pose for a photograph, and here we see driver Brian Latis and conductor Sue Milner posing alongside the steed prior to returning to Hull bus station. The enthusiast in question promised them copies of the photographs. He took the names, and sure enough, a few weeks later on, an envelope turned up at Anlaby Road Garage in Hull, addressed to them both, and there were copies of the photographs that were just seen within that. 804 was RM982 in London. It was re-registered NVS 804 in 1992 and sold in May 1995. After sale, it went through various dealers, and it was owned for a period of time by Keith Jenkinson, the proprietor of Bus Fair magazine and the author of many, many bus books. And a thoroughly nice chap. I met him in Halifax on the last day of the Halifax Joint Committee Local Services. Both of us were stood there freezing, watching the buses run past and having a really good chinwag. But after he'd owned it for a brief period, Keith Jenkinson sold the bus on, I believe to a dealer again. And then it passed to a TV company and eventually finished up being shown in the soap opera Emmerdale. Much to East Yorkshire's annoyance, it still had the East Yorkshire fleet names on the side of it. They were supposed to be removed before it appeared, but that hadn't been done, and they weren't too impressed by it. But anyway, after filming had finished and after its moment of stardom in Emmerdale, it went back to a dealer again, and it was later exported to Argentina, and it may well still exist out there, but records are quite sketchy. So we see 804 again here, posed on the forecourt of Anlaby Road Garage in Hull, alongside 802, and one of the Atlanteans that they replaced on the 56 and 56A. So unfortunately I haven't got photos of every one of East Yorkshire's Routemasters, as you've probably realised already. What I have got is an absolute load of photos of 807, so here we go, this is the first one. So this bus was formerly RM366 in London. It was new in December 1962, and as you can see it was registered 366 CLT. If I recall correctly, it was the first one to lose its registration number, it being sold to a lady in Hessel. And it was re-registered NKH 807A. It's seen here on a parking area behind Hull bus station known as the Muck. Between runs, it was unusual for a bus on the 56 and 56A to have time to lay over, so it's quite possible that something's gone wrong in this case. Either a conductor wasn't available and a run's been missed altogether, or the bus has run very late and has been just stood to one side to pick up its diagram later on in the day. Behind it you can see one of the ex-Northern General Leyland Atlanteans of ECW body. They were dual doored, as you can see, but the second door wasn't used in East Yorkshire service, and as you can make out there, they fastened a metal bar across it to stop it from being used. You can also see the roof of Paragon Railway Station in the background as well. So a photograph taken by myself, a very youthful version of myself in the summer of 1989, 807 again, still with its original registration number, in pretty much the condition we saw it in the last photograph as well, just on the standing Hull bus station waiting to set off on another journey along Holderness Road. I mentioned before that the plan to save a bus didn't really come off, and the problem was that the Routemasters had 10 fewer seats than the Atlanteans that they replaced. The Atlanteans were 74 seaters and the Routemasters only had 64 seats, so they often couldn't cope with the loads. They had to up the frequency of the service, and until they bought some extra Routemasters to run the extra journeys with, they had to use conventional Leyland Atlanteans and Bristol VRs and things like that on the route. Particularly remember the ex-Greater Manchester Atlanteans they had running on there. If there was a spare conductor available, they'd put the conductor on it, but if not, the bus would be run as a normal one-person operated vehicle. And they had to do that for a couple of years until they got sufficient second-hand Routemasters to augment the fleet that meant they could run the extra journeys with Routemasters. So the third shot of 807, slightly later by the look of the advert on it, and it's seen at the busiest pickup point in Hull, the stop on Jameson Street, just alongside British Home Stores and outside the former Co-op store. You can see there the bus is being followed by an East Yorkshire Bristol VR in a normal fleet livery of the time. That would also operate down part of Holderness Road on its way to Hornsey. You can see 807 in these photos as well as got the white band on the roof. It's been added on. And the fourth shot of 807 just turned into Hull bus station from Ferrons Way, being hotly pursued by a KHCT Dennis Dominator, which would have run down part of Holderness Road itself on its way in from Bilton Grange on the 14. You see the blind of the Routemasters already set for the next journey. It'd be more or less straight off. It'd just drop its passengers off in the entrance of the bus station, run round onto the stand and be straight back out to Long Hill on another journey on the 56. Unfortunately, it wasn't a happy ending for 807. When it was withdrawn in April 1995, it was sold to a dealer and then scrapped. So the final shot of 807, just there on the left-hand side of this lineup on the muck. As you can see there, it's carrying its new registration, NKH 807A. Should I say it's in the middle of the three? But yes, carrying the NKH 807A. On the left, you've got 802, carrying NRH 802A. On the right, you've got vehicle 808, registration VLT 188. So in 1989, East Yorkshire began to acquire some more Routemasters to augment the frequency on the 56 and mean that the one-person vehicles didn't have to run on there. And they started off by buying two from KHCT. These two had been running for an independent company called David Costa Buses, who traded as CityLink, and KHCT bought CityLink in 1989. They didn't want to run the Routemasters, so they put them straight into storage in their Cottingham Road garage while they wondered what to do with them. In July 1989, they sold them on to East Yorkshire, who put them into service alongside the 7 that they already had, and they took the fleet numbers 808 and 809, so 808 was the first of the two. It had been new as RM188 way back in December 1959, and it survived with East Yorkshire for quite a few years after they finished using them in 1995. It was in the Heritage Fleet until 2005, and it was sold for preservation. As far as I'm aware, it's still preserved to this day. As you can see from the photo, by this time, which is about 1990, they were trying the Routemasters on different routes as well as the 56 and 56A. So 808 is carrying the blind for the 121 to Beverley, and they were used for a time in about 1990-1991 on a half-hourly short working of the Hull to Scarborough 121 service, as I said, just between Hull and Beverley. Two buses provided the half-hourly frequency between them. The idea was because they were quick and because they were crew operated, they could keep quite a tight schedule. It didn't really work in practice because the top speed of them wasn't really high enough. They could just do about just under 40 miles an hour, and on the open road between Hull and Beverley it wasn't really quick enough. So it did tend to struggle to keep time, and eventually they were taken off and replaced by more conventional one-person operated buses. I remember riding on this route. I used to ride around my dad sometimes in the school holidays. He was a bus driver for East Yorkshire, and he used to take me with him to work. And we did quite a few shifts on the Beverleys, and I really enjoyed going up and down through Dunswell and Woodmansey on a Routemaster with the AEC engine screaming away. It was lovely. Fond memories of it. I don't really remember 808 working out that often, to be fair, but these photos tell a different story. And here we see 808 in Beverley bus station, Sowill bus station, just about to return to Hull on another journey on the 121. So the bus had been fitted with a tachograph so it could attend rallies, and it was kept as a bit of a semi-show bus, so it's got no adverts, and as you can see it's got a chrome wheel trim on the front wheel instead of it being painted in the primrose yellow colour. So they kept it quite smart at this point, as it did attend rallies and things. It also went on demonstration to other operators who were considering buying Routemasters. I know it went for Darlington Transport for a few weeks at one point. So it's a bit of a sad sight here. In 1992, a bus war broke out between East Yorkshire and KHCT, and various independents weighed in as well. The result was absolute carnage, and it was financially damaging to all parties involved. And that showed sometimes in the presentation of buses. You can see A28 here looking rather sorry for itself, looking quite scruffy. The wheel trims have gone off the front wheel. And it does look very much like the advert says it could do, with finding God's answer to its problems. It did actually. It was, as I said earlier on, it became part of the heritage fleet when they stopped using Routemasters in normal service in 1995, so it was restored to its previous pristine condition. But this shot dates from about 1993, somewhere around there, when they were used on the Orchard Park service, as well as the 56 and 56A. The Orchard Park routes 3, 4 and 5 have been introduced as part of the competitive strategy of the bus war that ran between Hull and the Orchard Park estate via various routes. As I said, they used Routemasters on them, generally speaking. And 808 there's carrying the blinds for a Route 4. So the other ex-CityLink bus became fleet number 809, registration 741DYE, new in November 1963 as RM1741. And it had a rather convoluted route to Hull. It was sold by London Buses to Stagecoach of Perth, and then it worked for the Associated Magic Bus Company in Glasgow before being sold to David Costa Buses, trading as CityLink, as we already mentioned. When East Yorkshire required it, it carried a rather nice, rather racy CityLink livery of metallic blue and silver, and they actually put it into service in that livery for a short period of time before it was repainted. Incidentally, 808 when they acquired it was still in London Transport red livery. It was new with a Leyland engine. I believe it had received an AEC engine by the time this photo was taken. Certainly the rather prominent AEC badge on the front would indicate that's the case. And it's seen here just swinging around into Prospect Street in Hull City Centre on its way inbound from Orchard Park on a Route 3. In 1994 this bus was registered as PAG 809A. It was withdrawn in 1995 with most of the rest of them, and unfortunately it was scrapped. So in spring 1989 Lincolnshire Roadcar bought the business of Gash of Newark, and among the acquired fleet were 3 AEC Routemasters. Roadcar were just about as impressed with the Routemasters as KHCT had been, and they found the same solution to the problem, which was to sell them to East Yorkshire. So the first of the trio was 1961's RM757, registered WLT 757, which became East Yorkshire's number 810. It entered service in Gash's livery. It was the only one that had actually been repainted by Gash into their fleet colours, the rather unusual blue, green and cream scheme you can see here. And it actually entered service with East Yorkshire in that livery, as you can see. When it was repainted, it was first painted into red and white fleet livery, as opposed to the traditional blue and primrose. And it first entered service with East Yorkshire in Scarborough, which is where this view was taken, and indeed the next one there's a second view of it as well, which I'll show you in a moment. But yeah, when it was repainted, it was painted into red and white fleet livery. It did a stint on demonstration with South Yorkshire Transport in 1990. They used it in Doncaster on a minibus route, if I remember rightly. And there's a second view of it in Scarborough. It was later fitted with a proper set of blinds. It's just about got a destination blind, as you can see there, just reading Scarborough. So as I said, it eventually received the blue and primrose livery like the rest of them carried. It was re-registered to NVS 855 in 1993. It was withdrawn in 1995. The last report of it was as a playbus in the Netherlands, so it may well still be out there. But after its short sojourn in Scarborough, after it received the blue and primrose livery, it joined the rest of the buses in Hull. So another bus to pass to Reading Mainline was this one, East Yorkshire's fleet number 811, one of the other ex-Gash vehicles, registration number ALD 990B. Comparatively a spring chicken, it was new in August 1964 as RM1990. And as I said, it was the second of the vehicles acquired from Lincolnshire Road Car that had come to them from Gash of Newark. Gash bought it from London Buses in October 1986, and it had passed the road car in May 1989, and then 2 months later, in July 1989, East Yorkshire bought the bus from Lincolnshire Road Car. So it was withdrawn in March 1995. It passed straight to Reading Main Line as their fleet number 25, and it's seen here in 1998 outside Reading Railway Station, contrasting sharply with the low-floor Optare XL behind it. I know which one I'd rather be riding on, to be fair. And as far as I know, the bus is currently preserved, still in the Reading Mainline livery. So I mentioned earlier that I recall travelling on the Beverley route with my dad driving, and the bus I remember most of all on that route was this one, 812, registration number ALM65B, another relatively youthful vehicle, new as RM2065 in November 1964, and it was the third of the trio to come to East Yorkshire via Gash of Newark and Lincolnshire Road Car. It's sitting here on the muck between trips to Beverley. Again, it wasn't usual for the buses on that route to have time to lay over, so it's possible that it's run very late, and another bus and spare driver have set off on its run, and it's just waiting to pick up its diagram later on in the day. Next to it is one of the ex-Greater Manchester Atlanteans that East Yorkshire acquired, and behind it, just in the distance, you can see a KHCT Atlantean there. So this bus survived East Yorkshire until 2014. In 1996 it was converted to open top, and it mainly worked on Scarborough seafront after that. It received a version of the then standard maroon and cream fleet livery, and at various times it ran with a large bow tie attached to the front end, which is part of the marketing strategy for the Scarborough open top buses. I think by the end it was regarded really as part of the heritage fleet more than anything else. But as I say, it was sold to Ensign Bus in 2014 in a dealer capacity, and it was another one to find itself in the Netherlands, and it may well still be there. So as well as the 121, the Routemasters found themselves being used on a 76Z service in the late 80s, early 90s. That was a short working of the Hull to Witherensea 76 service that ran between Hull and Thorngunbold. It was run briefly just to respond to competition from Head and Silverwing, who had started a service between Headon and Hull. Eventually East Yorkshire dealt with that by buying Head and Silverwing, and that got rid of the competition. They also ran on the Willoughby routes at various times, numbered 34 and 44, between Hull and Willoughby Square. But by about 1992, just before the bus wars broke out, they'd settled back onto the 56 and 56A routes. And then, as I mentioned, when the bus wars did break out, they went onto the Orchard Park services, the 3, 4 and 5. So when the bus wars were breaking out, East Yorkshire had 12 Routemasters, the 7 that they'd bought from London Buses directly, the 2 that had come from KHCT, and then the 3 that had come from Lincolnshire Road Car. Now that was more than enough to run the 56 and 56A, but it wasn't enough to run the Orchard Park services as well, so they needed to buy some extra second-hand Routemasters. Now in 1985 and 1986, a lot of Scottish operators had bought Routemasters from London Buses, and by 1992 they were starting to withdraw them all. So East Yorkshire bought 7 from Clydeside Scottish, including this bus, fleet number 814, registration LDS 237A. It had been re-registered in Scotland. They re-registered most of their vehicles in Clydeside Scottish, but unlike East Yorkshire, they didn't sell the Routemaster registration numbers. They tended to put them onto coaches to hide the age of them. So this bus was originally RM416, registered WLT416, and its registration number went onto a variety of coaches. I think the latest record of it was being used on a stagecoach ex-Hong Kong Leyland Olympian, weirdly enough. So Clydeside Scottish had bought this bus from London Buses in March 1986. It was bought by East Yorkshire in June of 1992, and it passed to PVS Carlton in May 1995, and its subsequent history, if it had any, is not recorded. So when the bus war died down, East Yorkshire and KHCT came to an arrangement. A lot of the competitive routes they agreed to share. So the 3, 4 and 5 all ran every 10 minutes. Every 20 minutes a KHCT bus would run, and on the balancing 20 minutes in between an East Yorkshire bus would run. East Yorkshire continued initially to use the Routemasters, but it caused problems because the Routemasters were quicker at stops, and so it tended to mess up the 10-minute frequency. So there were talks between the two companies, and East Yorkshire agreed to remove the Routemasters from the routes and to use ordinary one-person operated vehicles. After that, the Routemasters settled back onto the 56 and 56A. There were now 19 of them to run the service, which was far more than was needed, and that allowed East Yorkshire to withdraw the more worn-out versions, or the more worn-out members of the fleet, should I say, and just concentrate on the slightly better examples. But in 1995, Hull City Council proposed to build some bus lanes along Holderness Road. One of the stipulations they had was that East Yorkshire had to use some more modern vehicles, so the Routemasters were replaced on the 56 and the 56A by some repainted Leyland Olympians dated from around 1991-1992. But they were painted in the traditional blue and primrose livery, the same as the Routemasters, to try and give some continuity to the passengers. So we see 814 here in the later months of operation on the 56A, incorrectly showing 56A with the destination Bland Long Hill. Just turning around into Prospect Street there. I do remember the ex-Scottish Routemasters. The Routemasters, the lights inside them were screw-in bulbs like you'd find in your house. And the Scottish ones, a lot of them came down with bits of wire mesh screwed over the light bulbs so you couldn't unscrew them. It seems the little tinkers in the Glasgow area had worked out you could unscrew the light bulbs and just steal them, and that's what they've been doing. So a lot of the Scottish ones had, as I say, bits of wire mesh screwed over the light bulbs so you couldn't take them out. And I do remember that feature on them. So that's it for this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please check out parts 1 and 2 of the series, where we looked at East Yorkshire buses before 1969 and then in the National Bus Company era respectively. Part 4 will look at the early deregulation era, so from 1986 to about the early 1990s, so please look out for that on my channel. If you have enjoyed the video, please press the like button so more people can find it, and please consider subscribing as well. But as always, thank you for watching, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.